Hey, this is Mark Henry, author of Dancing with Energy, Healing Magic, and Mysticism. Here to talk to you more about the occult and the paranormal. Well, first I wanted to give a shout out to Saint Expedite, who I appealed to when I, in Louisiana, was trying to face down that hurricane that came through. So I thank him for protection of my house and all its inhabitants. So, thanks again, Saint Expedite. And we're going to talk about Saint Expedite later in this particular video. Today's topic is going to be on memetics and the occult. So first of all, let me explain what memetics and memes are, because you might not have a full understanding, although you probably understand what it means in social media. So the term meme was coined by Richard Dawkins, biologist, in the 70s in a book called The Selfish Gene. Now, how he defined meme was a unit of information that is spread from person to person that becomes culture. So we're talking about information that becomes religion, that becomes trends, that becomes political ideologies. Now, of course, I wasn't around to understand this in the 70s. However, I was aware of the idea of memes in the 90s when Richard Brody wrote a book called Virus of the Mind, which is actually I found to be pretty interesting, at least as an introduction to memes and memetics. So when we're talking about this information, this information is copied and replicated from person to person through conversation, and that's how it was originally done before we had the internet, before we had social media. Now that we have more advanced technology, it's spread through images, through sounds, particularly through, let's say, Facebook. When we get, memes are thought to be humorous, and they take hold and person shares it and on social media, and it becomes popular and it goes viral. And the word viral goes back, that is very much in keeping with the idea of memetics, because certain ideas take hold and others do not. So when a video goes viral on YouTube, that is very much in the same way that ideas became viral, how particular spiritualities went viral and took hold. Now, also when we're talking about memes, that memes can take a life of their own. If you think of the host as being us, because this is not, although we say virus, this is not necessarily biological, this is psychological. And I'm sure that it has a biological correlate in that, we might get a little bit excited and have some arousal in our sympathetic nervous system when we come across a meme that's particularly funny or stimulating. It's more like a psychological type of process. And social, because it is spread from one person to another. So memes are also, when they spread, are in competition with each other. So there are certain things just that overshadow other memes. Just like if you think about movies at the box office, one movie that may be real popular, or maybe would have been real popular, might be overshadowed by, I don't know, like a very popular Star Wars movie. Or, you kind of feel sorry for maybe some of the ones that came around when some of the Lord of the Rings films came about. If they occurred at the same time, one would be overshadowed by the other. And the same thing with memes. We only have a finite amount of attention that we can direct to things. So, when we're talking about memes, we also are talking about, let me say this, that when we're talking about memetics and memes, it is a description and it's not a judgment. Although what we do with it, we should be able to use discernment and a little bit of judgment. What I mean by that is that not everything that goes viral and that passes from one human to another through this energy and information transfer is necessarily empowering, and it's not necessarily positive. And yet we as human beings can easily hook into the negative, get worked up, get upset, and give it more attention. I think that especially when we're talking about some of the more negative aspects of spirituality and even the occult, I think that's one of the reasons why that takes hold. If you were to watch movies, the writers and directors do it to make it very stimulating and to capture attention. If it was very all positive and all kind of smooth, maybe a little bland, it wouldn't attract the same type of audience or viewership. So I leave it up to you to decide which memes, of course, are the ones that you should take in. But I feel like that me as a person, I am constantly evaluating pop culture. I'm constantly evaluating memes to see whether this is something that is positive and good for me or whether it is not. And unfortunately, or fortunately for me, I find that most of it is not, and that I have to spend more energy kind of setting things to the side. Because it's just not, that is not necessarily a type of reality that I want to live in, although I can face it. There is a shaping of my consciousness that I don't want things that are too biased or too slanted to one way to be a part of me, because then if I let it in, or even if it sneaks in, then I've got to clean it up. I've got to clean that end of my sidewalk up, and I don't want to deal with that. So I try to be attentive to what I'm allowing into my own world. So when I'm talking about this, I mentioned that. Okay, so what does the occult have anything to do with this? Because this is more like a psychosocial theory, memetics. And by the way, I would say that most of psychology isn't too interested in memetics because it is very immeasurable. The ideas, it's still the immaterial. It might as well be strictly spiritual. Very hard to pin down. So, the occult aspect of it. So how does this relate to the supernatural and the occult? Well, the first thing is that one could, and this has happened, one could create a thought form, mention it in a book or some type of blog or any other type of media, and then through the transfer of this information through the internet could make others aware of it, and others could participate in it, that thought form, and use that thought form, and then spread that information to others. And that could be that particular thought form could become part of maybe the occulture of thought forms. Might be mentioning in forums, Facebook groups. And that has actually been done. One of my friends, Philip Farber, wrote a book called it's a book of ATEM, A-T-E-M. And what ATEM is a thought form that he created part of his work, and he mentions ATEM and invites the reader to learn about ATEM and work with the thought form. And with these thought forms, the more you work with it, the more powerful it gets, and there's a sharing of information. And through his books, one could become more aware of ATEM and work with the thought form, and so it's a simultaneous exercise in memetics and in working with thought forms, which I think is pretty cool. The second example I'd like to give is, and I've mentioned this author before, John Crider, who wrote the book on the Archons, overcoming the Archons. He talks about, and he has a book on servitors, on creating a wealth servitor. And you have the choice to create your own. He tells you how to do that, or you can use an already existing thought form that he created to help to work with that, which has a little bit of a different experience, a little bit of feel, but it already has power waiting for you. And how does he express this? Through his books, through this particular book, through his website. He probably has a video somewhere. So by the use of memetics, this thought form, this servitor, so to speak, gets more awareness. So it's very much like the Phil Farber Book of Atem. So might be something to consider if you are someone who likes to write, or considering writing a blog or a book, going in that path. Number 2, spiritual figures. And this is where I'm bringing up Saint Expedite again, because if you remember, Saint Expedite is a folk saint. If you're Catholic, you can find information on him, but if you look deeper, scholars doubt whether he was a historical figure, which that's not unusual. There are certain saints that are in that category, and they have power, and people pray to them for to go to the saint to Jesus to intercede and all of that business. So it really matters not as far as the magic's concerned. However, I mention him because he is very much a mimetic figure. If you look at my videos, the Saint Expedite video, the first one, has more comments, has more likes, has more views than any other video that I have. That idea of Saint Expedite has just blown through spirituality, Catholicism, and is a force to be reckoned with. And as a figure, he is highly regarded, and people pray to him, and he delivers, and it's just an amazing thing. I'm surprised, actually. There was a time when I did not work with Saint Expedite, and I stumbled upon him, and he still ceases to amaze me. And I am not Catholic, so it doesn't matter whether you are or not. That power, that force, that energy of Saint Expedite is still there. But again, the word of Saint Expedite and his idea has spread either unintentionally or intentionally through memetics. So next, so one could, and this is an application question because I have like 2 or 3 videos on sigil magic. So one could conceivably create their own meme. I'm talking about the social media memes that we're very familiar with, and create a little bitty sigil. The sigil could be made for any particular magical purpose, whether it be for finance, for love, or whatever it is, and placed maybe in the corner of the meme. And that sigil can be programmed to, when someone looks at it, the meme, that it will capture the energy from the attention of the viewer and all members of that audience who are looking at that meme as a way of charging itself. So if it is popular enough and if it goes viral, you can imagine that sigil is going to get pretty powerful if you count the number of views and possible likes and everything in between. So something to think about as an application for internet memes. Okay, that's basically it. I don't want to take up too much of your time. Please subscribe and like. Please stay tuned. Got more videos coming your way in the future. Have a good weekend.